All right, case study number 5 for the immunologic disorders. It starts with KD as a 36-year-old gay professional man who has been HIV positive for 6 years. First question, what is pneumocystitis carinii pneumonia, or PCP? And we've talked about that as being fungal pneumonia, and the reason that's a big deal is because, one, it's opportunistic infection, but it shows that the T cells, which are supposed to be fighting against fungal infections, that the T cells are down. The CD4 count is down. So this person, more than likely, because the opportunistic infection is probably has AIDS, which I believe in the scenario it does mention that they have AIDS. Number 2, what is the significance of the purplish spots over Katie's neck and arms? And that is showing that they have the diagnosis also of an opportunistic infection, being Kaposi sarcoma. Identify 4 nursing diagnoses for KD, and with the variety that they could have been, you just look in the back of your book and list 4 more nursing diagnoses. A lot of them at this point would probably revolve around diet, nutrition. Sorry, my kids are in the background. So nursing diagnoses revolving around infection risk, solitude, health, nutrition, stress, exercise, stuff like that. Number 4, what precautions will you need to use when caring for KD? At this point, you'd be wanting to wear mainly gown, mask, and gloves, depending on your proximity to the patient, because you want to protect, it's called reverse isolation, being you're protecting the patient from the nurse, because you don't want to give anything that you have to the patient. Number 5, what will be the focus of your ongoing assessment? List 5 things, and again, this could be a variety of things, mainly looking at certain lab values, white count, lung sounds, vital signs. Fever definitely should be in there because that's showing the infections, those kinds of things. Number 6, what major side effects of his antibiotics should be monitored? Should you monitor KD for? And that is other infections, such as like C. diff, because you're killing off all the normal flora at this point, so you have these other diseases, other fungal infections, thrush, C. diff, things like that, that is a big side effect of antibiotics, especially when somebody has a low immune system. You can also be looking for rash, things like that, more mild side effect issues. Number 7, differentiate between HIV positive and AIDS. Mentioned that on the previous case study, that when you have HIV, you just simply mean that you have a positive ELISA test times 2 and Western blot positive. When you have AIDS, you take that HIV positive status and you add CD4 count is below 200 and opportunistic infections have occurred, which in this case we have that. I don't think the case study mentioned that the CD4 count was below 200, but with multiple opportunistic infections occurring at this point, I'm assuming that AIDS diagnosis is there. Number 8, why is KD's development of PCP of particular importance in light of HIV status? Like I just said, that when you start developing these opportunistic infections, it means that your immune system is diminished and you're progressing towards, or then would have a diagnosis of AIDS. 9, KD has been seropositive for several years, yet he has been asymptomatic for AIDS. What factors may have influenced KD's development of pneumocystitis? And if you go back to the scenario, you see that he's now showing new symptoms, fatigue, night sweats, things like that. But he's been working long hours, skipped meals, stressed at work. And those kinds of things decrease the immune system as well. And so when you're stressed, you're not eating right, you're working long hours, you're not getting good rest, those things can progress the development of AIDS and opportunistic infections. Then it moves on to number 10. KD was taught about disease transmission, safe sex, encouraged to maintain moderate exercise and rest, etc. When he was first diagnosed. Give at least 4 additional topics that should be discussed with KD before he goes home. So you've already mentioned those things. You'd want to reiterate those things of exercise, rest, diet. But at this point, you're talking about infection control. So wearing masks, staying away from crowds, watching for fever, things like that you're going to want to be much more specific on, not just maintaining a healthy immune system, but also watching for signs and symptoms of other diagnoses, disease processes, and infections developing. Number 11, what laboratory data will most likely be mentioned on KD or monitored on KD in the future? And that should be straightforward, the CD4 count and viral load. Those 2 things are huge indicators as to the development and progression of the disease. And list at least 5 other opportunistic infections that KD is at risk for developing. I know that's crazy, I'm yawning all the time. List at least 4 other opportunistic infections. You've got a bunch listed in your books: cytomegalovirus, toxoplasmosis, things like that that are listed in the book, in the PowerPoint. So focus on some of those opportunistic infections that we discussed more about. And that's the end of case study number 5.